Good day. A recent poll in Russia has shown that for the first time in 2 decades, America is no more the most hostile country towards the Russians. The Russians consider America, after 14 years of being the number one country that they consider most hostile to their country, it's now number 4. This year, the number one country that the Russians consider to be hostile to their country is Germany. There's two reasons for this. One, the election of President Donald Trump in America and his recent actions and moves to try to end the Ukraine war and pull back from antagonism towards the Russians. And the second one is the election of Friedrich Merz as the German Chancellor. The German Chancellor has stepped up the rhetoric against Russia and has also stepped up his support of Ukraine in the Russia-Ukraine war. He has even said recently that he is ready to give the Ukrainians Taurus missiles and start the rearmament of the German military. Welcome to my program, Ebima Omungo's Perspective on Global Politics, Global Affairs. If you're new to my channel, subscribe. And if you like the views expressed here, please leave a comment, like, and share. Russia and Germany have had a long and interesting history. But the most consequential one is that they fought at the Eastern Front of the World War II, and the Russians had 3 massive battles with the Germans after they were invaded by the Nazi Germany led by Hitler then. They lost a lot of people in that war. It is said that even though they were the Soviet Union, the majority of the losses was by the Russians. They lost over, in all, 23 million people, of which about 8 million were military personnel, and the rest, almost 16 to 17 million people, were civilians. Eventually, the Russians won the war. They took the battle to the Germans, and for several years, they occupied the eastern part of Germany. And they didn't leave that part of Germany until the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1990 and the fall of the Soviet Union. So when the Soviet Union fell, they pulled back from Berlin and they allowed the reunification of Germany. Since then, they've had a benign relationship, so to say. The eastern part of Germany was integrated into the western part a bit, and the unified Germany has changed and transformed into a global economic behemoth since then. And relationships have changed over time, but they became more friendly under Chancellor Gerhard Schröder and Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel and Schröder sought Russian hydrocarbon in driving German industry. And they did this to the extent where Schröder was even on the board of some Russian oil and gas companies. They built good relationships. Angela Merkel was from the eastern part of Germany. She spoke Russian. And Putin, the president of Russia, he was a KGB agent in East Germany, and he speaks German. And he used that they had good relationships, and he built. So the Germans, for the past 20 years, or if not more, have had a benign, economically beneficial relationship with the Russians. But on the prompting or the start of the Ukraine war, something happened. It was fortuitous or unfortunate that, let me use the word unfortunate, for Olaf Scholz, the chancellor who took over from Angela Merkel, that at the beginning point of his chancellorship was when the Ukraine Russia war escalated into a hot war. And I have stated in other videos, and I believe that that war was prompted by the hatred and scorn that Biden had for Putin. Biden had a strong hand in starting that war, in the disrespect for the views and the concerns of the Russians, and the threat in several meetings he had with Putin. The threat he kept giving to Putin that if Putin dared to do anything, he would destroy Putin and destroy the Russian nation. Let's not forget that for a long time, Biden had tried, even while he was vice president, he had tried to convince Obama to support the Ukrainians and to fight a war with the Russians, but Obama refused. So when he got the chance to be president, he implemented what he had wanted. But Olaf Scholz was a new chancellor of Germany then, and Olaf Scholz just was walked into an ambush. Let's not forget that the first thing asked of Olaf Scholz to support Ukraine, the first form of support Olaf Scholz gave to Ukraine was helmets and uniforms. He was not ready to get involved in that war. And helmets and uniforms was an expression of the kind of support he wanted to give, to the kind of role he wanted to play, or him here now being sovereign of the Germans. He didn't want a part of that war. His body language said it and everything. But over time, he became co-opted into the war, and he was expected to do more. And over time, as the war progressed and as he got roped in more, German equipment, including Leopard tanks, IRST, air defense systems, and so many other forms of small and large arms were given to the Ukrainians. The Germans were not particularly very keen on giving this, but their slow leg dragging was given a jolt finally when there was destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline. The Nord Stream pipeline was very critical to German economy. This was the culmination of the relationship between the benign relationship and the growing economic ties between Russia and Germany. That Nord Stream 1 helped the German economy to grow by giving them access to cheap Russian gas. And Nord Stream 2 was supposed to boost that, because following the Ukraine crisis, and when Ukraine closed off some part of the gas pipeline that was supplying Europe, Angela Merkel felt it was necessary to have a second Nord Stream pipeline coming in. But just as Olaf Scholz was taking office, Nord Stream was supposed to be coming into operation, and Olaf Scholz did not approve for the second Nord Stream to come into operation. Just they wanted to use it as leverage against the Russians in holding them back. But the Russians had already gotten tired, and I think Putin felt disrespected. And when he launched his operation against Ukraine, he has always said, or historians have said, that it was at such a limited form when he moved into Kiev that he was trying to use that as leverage to get some concessions and get the Ukrainians to the negotiating table, because earlier agreements, Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, between them and Ukraine had failed. Russia's concern was the way Ukraine was treating the people in the Donbas regions, and they were speaking for the Russian speaking part of, or they were interceding for the Russian speaking part of, and they wanted them to have autonomy. They wanted them to be better treated. They could use their language. The contents of the Istanbul agreement that it came out of, that was supposed to have been an agreement where um, Russia would let Ukraine get out of their conflict, was not for Russia to take parts of Ukraine. It was not. It was just for Russia to press the point that Ukraine should give more autonomy to the people in the Donbas region and the Russian-speaking part. But when this didn't happen, and Biden and Boris Johnson convince the Ukrainians to go to war with the Russians or to continue or disagree about the Istanbul Agreement, Putin launched the special military operation that we see today, and Olaf Scholz was caught in between it. And when Olaf Scholz was caught in between it, he was expected as a member of NATO and as a strong, powerful member of NATO to show support for Ukraine. And over time, he escalated, he continued to give. He gave Leopard tanks. They were promptly blown off the fields of Ukraine there, just as the British gave Challenger tanks and Abrams tanks. In fact, today it just emerged that almost 31 out of the 31 Abrams tanks given by America, almost 29 have been blown off by the Russians. So these were the kind of supports I received. But there was one point where Olaf Scholz said no, he wasn't going to move beyond that. And that was when he was expected to give the Taurus missiles. He stood against it. He said the Taurus missile systems, as we later emerged, needed Germans to be in Ukraine to give because of the targeting, because of complications of that missile systems. They will have German military personnel setting targeting coordinates for the Ukrainians, and he didn't want that. It was a bridge too far for him. And he held off that. But he was not the only German who stood against that war. There is another group of Germans who unfortunately are not part of the mainstream political flow. They are rising, and the alternative for for Deutschland Party, ADF, grew and challenged and stood and complained about the war and its impact on Russian economy and industry. I mean, German industry and economy. They didn't think that losing access to cheap Russian gas was good for them. It was not in their strategic national interest, and making war with Putin was not also in their strategic interest. And they held that view, and they continue to hold that view. But unfortunately, because of the unique way of the German political system, they have not been able to form a part of any government. The way German system is structured, no one party can form government. They have to form a coalition. But the AFD has never been able to or accepted to form a coalition because of the so-called extremist view they hold. Their views against immigration is being held against them as being xenophobic. So it wasn't that the Russians were lacking in German friends or people who saw their point of view. It was just that the way the political structure is, they don't allow those ones to come into power. And when Olaf Scholz left, Mertz comes in. So these two realities now emerge. Donald Trump is saying that I'm stepping away from this war. I have said in previous videos that Donald Trump is not a supporter of Ukraine. He doesn't like Zelensky, and it's not in his he doesn't want to give the Ukrainians any money. And being a real politician, he knows that Russia is better to make peace with Russia. He doesn't want Russia to move closer into the hands of China. So he wants to get better relationships with China, with Russia, especially use Russia's leverage again in Iran. He has a lot of useful use for Russia as a friend. He has always maintained this and said this even in his first presidency. So now, and he has animals against Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. So he's not so keen on supporting them. So while he wants to make peace with the Russians, he doesn't want to support the Ukrainians. So what does he do? He crafts a very beautiful system called the peace deal. So now he talks about the peace deal. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. While he's talking peace, he's staving off giving funding to Ukraine. And for the Russians, American funding in Ukraine is the reason why Ukraine has been adamant, recalcitrant, and stubborn in pursuing this war. American funding not coming to Ukraine is a good thing for the Russians, and that's why America's position under Trump has changed. And the German position under Mertz, who has now said that he will give Taurus missiles to the Ukrainians, who has said he will rearm the German army to the point where instantly Lavrov, the Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, just says that yes, Germany is now moving back to the slippery slope that led her to two world wars. In other words, they are rearming and they will start to show their strength. Europeans too may not be saying it now, but there's a lot of disquiet in Europe with a big and powerful and strong and militarized Germany. Germany is always feared. Once you are big and strong, you are feared. And countries like Poland, who have had long histories with Germany, maybe remembering that they have a conflict on the east of them and on the west of them too with Germany, and that's not a good thing for them. So this saying that Germany is going to rearm has struck a nerve in most Russians. Russians are now perceiving Germany to be the most hostile due to their history, due to the long association, due to the memory they have of what the Nazis did to them. A country losing 23 million people into one group of people is it's not memory that can be wiped away very easily. And for all these actions of Mertz in just this brief few months of being German Chancellor has made the Russians to feel that the Germans are now the most hostile country to the people to their country. And let's not forget, there are some scholars who also believe that Friedrich Merz, is now the most dangerous German leader since Hitler. How profound such a statement is. And his support for Ukraine is stepping it up a notch at a time that Ukraine is almost certainly losing its biggest partner. He visits America recently to visit Donald Trump, and rather than ask for any favors for the German economy, German manufacturers, German industry that is reeling under higher production costs, his one statement is that America should not abandon Ukraine, that pressure should be put on Putin so that he can stop the war. I wonder how much pressure again. Well, how much pressure, they've cut them off so many things. But while we may be talking about Friedrich Merz, let's not forget one other German who has done serious harm to German-Russian relationship, and that's Ursula von der Leyen. Ursula von der Leyen has used her position in the European Union Commission President to full effect in destruction, an attempt to destroy Putin and in the same breath destroy Russia. She has been the most stringent opponent, using the instrumentality of the commission to rally 27 members, save two who sometimes are recalcitrant in following her orders. That's Hungary and Slovakia. These countries have rolled out several sanctions against Russia, seized sovereign Russian assets to the tune of almost $200 billion, if not more, that are in Euroclear. She has also made Russia to be thrown out of the SWIFT system, sanctions that are supposed to destroy the trading ability, the financing ability, the transportation abilities of Russia, the ability of Russia to do business with anybody in the world. She reels them out. She wakes up every morning, every day, and it is how can I harm Russia and how can I harm Putin? That has been her one consuming passion for the past 3 years. And it is not a surprise that since she's not getting any takers for her rhetoric in destruction of Russia, she has not been invited and has not visited America because that's not what Trump wants to hear. So she has not been in America, unlike under Biden, where she was always next to Biden, as Biden will yell, "We will support Ukraine as long as it takes." At this time, it's not the same rhetoric. The rhetoric to not support Ukraine now is, we want peace, we want peace. So Ursula von der Leyen, being a German, and with the actions she has been taking, has played her own role in making the Russians feel that Germany is it's very hostile to their country now. The 22,000 rounds of sanctions every day, and we hear there's going to be the 18th round of sanctions. The Hungarians have already said they're not going to be part of it. That these sanctions don't do anything. The Russian economy has grown. All attempts to stymie, and compress it has failed. The Russians are now the fourth largest economy in the world, if not more than that. They produce their military capacity has increased, their GDP has increased, the economy is thriving, and then they formed new alliances and new friendships that have made them survive all political and diplomatic barriers they've put across them. So even though Van Leiden has been very, very stringent and resilient in her attack on Putin and Russia, she has not really achieved anything. But we should not forget that she's German and she's using the instrument. She was once the defense minister of Germany. Don't forget this also, defense minister. So these tie-ins are tie-ins that the Russians hear and discuss, and these are very well and informed people. And it's not a surprise to me at all that now the Russians consider the Germans to be the most hostile country to their to their country. I come to the end of my video today. If you like or you have any opinions about what I've discussed today, please put them in the comment section. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Even if you are not new, I see that quite a lot of people are not new. They stumble onto the channel, they watch, but they don't subscribe. Please subscribe so that we can grow this channel together and discuss geopolitics together. I like geopolitics a lot. I like to see how the actions of one place ties into the other place and how these actions of political leaders and actors shape our life and shape our reality. That is me for today. Thanks for being with me. I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye.